So kicking in, welcome everyone that's actually online. Appreciate you joining us, as well as those that have turned up in person. We're here in Sydney at the Microsoft Reactor, fairly empty room, but we've got 3 people here. When it comes to doing the user group, I know I used to fly down to Melbourne monthly. We're not in a scenario yet where we can do flying around, and they're even in lockdown at the moment too. So it may not start for a while yet. We'll see whether that kicks off. So I do appreciate the fact that we have then audiences both online and in person. So in a room, I'll try not to walk around because I believe it's all a little noisy. I can take my heels off if need be. I need to wear kind of flat rubber shoes so I'm not walking around. So my apologies if there's any extraneous noise from the wooden floor here. I'll try not to move. So getting in and getting started, are you going to, of course, and now it doesn't want to move through there. I need to go back over to my presentation so it'll recognise. There we go. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and online, wherever you happen to be, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples here today. When it comes to both online and in person, we always have a bit of a code of conduct on our user groups, being welcoming, kind and understanding of differences, and if you're online, using the most appropriate emoticons and things like that as we go along. Be nice, basically. If you haven't been on before, my name is Kirsty. I am from On Point Solutions. I have been running the user groups now for adoption for 4.5 years. I have been going. So some time now. We have, as I said, both Sydney and Melbourne. If you need to connect with me, feel free to join on LinkedIn, or if you follow what's going on, I'll put out sort of news and things through Twitter, and that's sort of where I tend to do more of the what's going on in the news. But you'll see the recordings of this will actually go live afterwards if you want to go back and see anything in particular. So what have I been up to over the last month? Last time I talked about North Queensland. This time it was my grandson's 4th birthday. So this was the cake I made him. So some people have seen over time that I do cake decorating. It's how I shut my head down when I'm not talking tech. I do cakes. So that was his little Lego cake, my little man on the go. So what's new? Kicking in the what's new. Oh, here we are. Okay, you ready? I always go 100 miles an hour on this. So when it comes to sharing content, you'll notice it's already even come about now. It's rolled through. It's moved pretty quickly, consolidating into one view and with your Windows, and also now on your Google Chrome, and it's the latest Microsoft Edge as well. So you'll see a bit of a different screen. It's the one over to the bottom on the right-hand side there. The sharing isn't available yet, so for those Linux users, right? If you do want to ask. Presenter mode, we have talked about this sort of in the past. It is now fully rolling out, except it's only the first layout is rolling out, which is the silhouette in front of, but there's going to be another 2 coming soon. And those ones are going to be the reporter one and then the side-by-side type one. So there's going to be some other layouts flowing through. When it comes to meetings, we've got a couple of different ways now to managing the camera. So if you go into your options, you'll see already you've got allow the mic for attendees, allow camera. So these are things that you can actually turn off now directly from the options. And you can adjust those when you're in the meeting, and and so can the attendees if you've got certain things turned on or off, but you can change it at any point. But okay. Searching the meeting participants list. So as you've got them, then you can do that, invite them in if they're actually not there. So adding, searching, maybe it's, someone's, and you can hear their voice and you can hear the audio, you can search them and then like maybe mute them, for example. Especially if you've got hundreds, if not thousands of people in that particular meeting, that's the way to be able to do your search and admit now. Spotlighting, so there's a couple of different spotlights. You can actually have spotlights on multiple participants now. You can stop the individual, and you can do it where it's up to a maximum of 7 participants simultaneously now in spotlighting. Okay, good when you've got panels kind of thing and you might be doing a speaker type. Okay. Your polls, when it comes to some of the questions now, you've got the ability to be able to do the tick the correct answer. So when they hit the correct answer, it will actually then show what was the correct in your polls inside Teams. So that's sort of that automatic. The other thing, and I've actually seen it, you may have before in Teams, that when you fill out a form, depending on what you name it, For example, I had one recently, which was like a leave request, when you're putting a leave, and it auto-populated this, do you want these questions? And it auto-populated with everything, and I went yes, and it literally put the whole lot in for me without me having to think about it too much. This whole AI backend was awesome. And I've had it where it's like, you know, Christmas party invite, and it will auto-populate with all the things that you might want on a Christmas party. So you'll see some of that flowing through now in other ways. So that's pretty cool. You've got a breakout room timer. This has become very popular, especially when it's for school. Was kind of where it really flowed in, was being able to go, you've got this much time left, and what a countdown inside those breakout rooms. Blocking downloads for non-channel team meeting recordings for the whole OneDrive piece. So you know, we've now got it where it's kind of very open, but you can start to sort of set a few things around the policies to block the downloads of the OneDrive recording. So I thought that one, though it kind of goes in a bit more into the technical, but I think it's really important when it comes to the end users so they understand what's going on. You've also then got in Yammer. So when you've got inside Teams, when you go to put a Yammer link, it's now kind of giving you that, you know, preview. If you don't want the full drop-in preview, you can actually then just delete it. So that's sort of flowing through with a link that's pasted from chat. From your mobile phone, the whole broadcasting for a screen from your mobile phone, we have talked about it, got put off a few times, sort of, but it is now here. In terms of calling, the experience now when you go to the calling screen, it's all very laid out together to make it that little bit easier, so you're not having to sort of click around as much. The call merge now has come in too. Chatting, external participants, so you can have up to 250 people across the organisation and external coming through now into chat, which is one that I have been looking forward to, because I deal with a lot of vendors and partners and often they're external parties, so it makes it that little bit easier to have them in a single chat. Lots of other things. For the Mac, the sound is now coming through, including the AI suppression if you're a Mac user. The browser view updates, so those mode for the galleries and things like that are coming in now in Edge and Chrome. So you've got a couple of different views that are online now, which you didn't have before. They were kind of going, I'm not seeing what you're seeing. So that's flowing in. And then you've got an improved participants list that's actually broken out now into different, you'll see it when you go into, if you go to chat and you look at your meeting, it'll all also be sort of laid out a little bit, but now you've got lobby presenters and attendees and sorted in alphabetical. Okay. Some of the other meeting organisers and presenters can do the raise or lower hands. That was always a bit about, you know, trying to do it individually. We can now look at that in terms of bulk. Coming through. So it's going to start early June, so we're about to kick in, completed by mid, cross fingers. PowerPoint, you've got the little button, I don't know if you saw it came up in PowerPoint in the top right hand corner. You can just kick directly off and start presenting from your presentation rather than going over to Teams and then going the opposite. Okay, so you can do that now directly from PowerPoint in the top. There's a couple of other features that are flowing into PowerPoint, inserting audio and configuring. This is online, so that you've got the whole online in the web. You've got that standout option where you're fixing the position of the overlay when you're in presenter mode, and then annotation. So that annotations is in PowerPoint Live in Teams when you're doing PowerPoint Live. So you've now got those annotation features and highlighters and stuff like that, which you didn't have before. Modern commenting, awesome new features. There's lots coming in around modern commenting. If you're not familiar with it, I'd highly recommend going having a look. I've got the link there on what's sort of going on around the modern commenting and anchoring against objects and being able to reply, resolve, for example. So you've got a whole thread and you can then resolve. So there's lots of things that are coming into play, which will eventually lead into other features that are part of that new kind of fluid framework and Task and Viva, and they're all going to start sort of, you know, tying in more and more. There was new in Yammer, there's actually quite a bit. When I had presented last, it was just after I presented that the April announcement all came out of new things in Yammer. Go have a look. I've only put a couple of things because there's a whole heap on this space. There's a whole heap around the insights some new community insights reports coming in if you happen to be a Yammer user. The other thing is there's some brilliant training resources that have gone up. So I've put a link to the videos, and you can download them as well to go and put them into your own Yammer network. So I love those ones to be able to help people with learning, so some of those resources. The desktop experience. So this is coming through, it's actually coming through Edge Chrome, where you can kind of put a link to the desktop, for example, and it gives you like that, that app look. So you can actually have it on your PC per se. So you can pin then and launch it from your device. You'll see that if you look back at the Microsoft Ignite, there was a video, and there's also some information if you're not sure what that looks like. In terms of what's new in SharePoint, there are some conferences coming up that are going to be of value. You know, I would go and have a look at, you've got the European SharePoint conference. It actually kicks off today, well, actually technically tomorrow, the day after, because today's the first here, but Europe, so it'll be from all hours tomorrow. But there's all going to be the recordings and a lot of sessions. Most of it is actually free. There will be some content that might be, you know, will actually cost if you want to go that one step further, but would recommend going and have a look. Plus, when it comes to SharePoint and OneDrive for Business, if you're using Internet Explorer 11, it is going. So you have to do something about that before August 17. And don't forget, same with Skype for Business. You've now got 60 days, I think, left, or 59 days left before it is no longer available. So you need to then, if you haven't got your rollout plan for Skype for Business, I would highly recommend getting in contact with Fast Track to roll you over. Okay. You've now got SharePoint News in the Yammer feed, so you can actually go both ways, which is awesome. This is all available for you after the fact, and the presentations and everything too, by the way, so that you know. The what's new in lists, and Andrea's going to go through. I didn't put much in because I kind of went, we've got Andrea playing around with this one a little bit more, so I didn't want to go too in depth. But now it's the permissions, so being able to share lists and what that actually looks like. So you've got the share button, because it comes from SharePoint, you can share your list, and then you can go, well, what is the share and what can you actually view? I've just put the little table that comes from online to help you to understand there around sharing. It's the same support as what you had for files and folders. What's new in Outlook? There's a few things actually. A lot of it tends to be mobile phone, but for me, I'm loving this one, pinning something in terms of one of your emails. You can actually pin it. That way it stays to the top of the list on your mobile phone. Loving it, considering how much I'm working on the go. I don't know about you guys, but I tend to work on the go an awful lot. So having some, and it gives you a bit of a different color, and you can see that it's pinned. So you'll see over on the far right-hand side on the picture, you can tell what is pinned. So that way you've got it as part of like your reading pane. There's the collaboration conference that's kicking off in another week or so. Highly recommend getting in and having a look at that one. Time zones are always, the difficulty, but then there's going to be recordings for some things, and off the back of it, I always highly recommend going and listening to Caruana, because she is the queen of all things adoption. That's what she does and looks after. If you're interested in anything that's going on across this space, she's the lady to follow. I still have in here all the news from Ignite for anyone that may not have gone to the previous few. I'm just keeping it in here for now, because this is going to be flowing through over the next year. If you really want to see kind of what's coming or been announced, a lot of that is in there. But without further ado, we've actually got Andrea. She's joining us online from Seattle. I really appreciate you coming in, Andrea. She's the product manager for Microsoft that's actually dedicated to Microsoft lists, and looking at sort of the adoption and collaboration and how we work, have some of that work management and what the stories are going to be. So she's going to give us some stories and scenarios of how we can actually use lists and how it can help us, and some of the adoption content that's available for you. She, as I said, over there in Washington, she's been there for about 2 years, I believe, but I will let you tell your story, Andrea. I am going to hop out of this screen and let you do the takeover now. I will bring you up on the screen so everyone can see, and I will just make sure that you are spotlighted. So if you'd like to take over.
There. Hopefully that screen should be presenting.
It is indeed here. Thank you.
Thank you. How's the audio in the room also? Oh, okay. I was going to say there was an echo, but I think it's better now with it with it muted. But hello, everyone. I'm so glad to be here as always. And lovely introduction already, but yes, I am the dedicated product marketing manager for Microsoft List along with my coworker Mark Cashman. But I focus specifically on growing awareness and usage for the product. So adoption is also very much my thing. If anyone is familiar with the Microsoft 365 adoption site, the List adoption page on that site is one of the web assets that I own. So a lot of what I've been doing in the past year or so has been creating more resources and assets for list adoption. So really, really happy to be coming and talking here today. Let me see if I can advance. There we go. So quick agenda. Today we'll focus mostly on an overview of Microsoft List and kind of how it fits in with the rest of the collaborative work apps and collaboration apps and solutions. I'll kind of give an overview of what List is for those who are not familiar, and then I also can do a quick demo on creating a list and customizing that. After that, I'd love to dive into more adoption scenarios, things like that. And so I'll also walk through the adoption site later, and of course, questions and answers throughout. I actually cannot see the chat right now, but feel free to leave questions in the chat. I think Kirsty's going to be monitoring it. And if you have questions in the room or anything, feel free to go off mute. So let's get started with the broader story. Before we jump into lists, I want to set the scene of where it fits into the rest of the Microsoft 365 suite. And this is where the collaborative work management story comes together. So how many times have you thought to yourself that you're wasting more time managing your work than doing the actual work itself? With how much information and work streams we have to balance these days, it's a common occurrence. But luckily, Microsoft 365 provides a set of apps to help you organize your work and maximize team results. So the apps that I want to focus on are Microsoft Planner, Lists, and To Do to manage work, and then OneDrive, SharePoint, and Office to collaborate on that work. And of course, they're all brought together by Microsoft Teams, which is our central hub for collaborative work management. So we always get a lot of questions about which app to use when and what are the differences between all of them. And I know we definitely have an abundance of apps, but each of these apps are also very purposeful in their design. And hopefully this will help you find the best combination of solutions for your specific business needs. So let's get started with the tracking apps. For tracking team and individual tasks, we have Planner and To Do, which work much like you would expect. You can add a few details about each task, set a date for completion, and mention somebody to assign and engage them. And then once a task is finished, it disappears from that view. Using Microsoft Lists, you can actually track a lot of different types of ongoing information and not just tasks themselves. So you can also include their progress status and file attachments and other details. And you define what information you need to track and how you want to do it using very diverse scenarios, and lists are super highly customizable. So we'll look more into that later. And then once your work streams are organized, Microsoft also empowers you to deliver that work with your team. And that's where Microsoft Office co-authoring and mentions come in, and then OneDrive and SharePoint for any sort of file sharing for your list, plans, and documents. And then finally, Microsoft Teams brings everything together. I know we're all familiar with Teams itself, but the great thing about each of these collaborative work management apps is that they're all integrated into Microsoft Teams natively. So you don't actually have to launch a separate window or a third-party app in order to collaborate on all of your work efforts and also keep track of the work that you have to do. You can just spin up tabs for Planner or lists inside your Teams channel itself, and you don't have to worry about resharing anything or keeping everyone up to date. So again, all of these apps are available with your Microsoft 365 business or enterprise subscriptions already, so you don't need to do anything additional in order to get access to all of this. So hopefully that was helpful to understand the greater power of using the collaborative work management apps together. Now let's dive a little bit further into the 3 work management apps and what their differentiators are. So we know that To Do is the best for individual tasks, and the app has some features that makes it best for this purpose. For example, there's a curated My Day list of tasks in the to-do interface that makes it easy to see your day-to-day asks. It also lets you set up repeatable tasks. So if you want to set a reminder to check a required training every month, or for example, you can set the task to remind you monthly. On the other hand, in the middle column, we have Planner, which provides visibility into your whole team or project's tasks that are both created by you or your colleagues. So again, this is great for team tracking because it has a Kanban board view, and you can actually bucket tasks for your team or for your project in different categories. And it also has really nicely built-in visual charts so you can view data insights and progress dashboards right inside your plan. And then finally, Microsoft Lists can be used for individual or team information. Rather than primarily being task-based, however, it works great for tracking ongoing work efforts. So there's a lot more flexibility in lists to customize both aesthetically with row and header customization and conditional formatting. And there's also automations inside for getting notified or triggering some other action. And again, you can always go in, add more or less to that. So with that hopefully cleared up, let's dive into the hero of the show today, Microsoft Lists. Any questions so far, by the way? All right. A bit of an echo there, I think. Okay, let's move on then. So I am introducing Microsoft Lists now. Again, lists are designed to be simple, smart, and flexible to help you track what matters most. So lists are super easy to create and easy to share. And the good news is that it's actually accessible across several different devices. So you can use lists on your desktop, through Teams, or actually on mobile too with our newer Microsoft Lists app. And lists are also incredibly smart. So we're building them with capabilities that help you keep everyone in sync without requiring a lot of time or configuration on your part. For example, we've made it easy to develop rules based on the type of information that you're tracking. So when something in a list changes, it could trigger an email or tag someone through an app mention so the right people are alerted at the right time. And then finally, lists are flexible. So really easy to configure everything, color code certain items, and add conditional formatting within the list interface. And of course, if you are Power App savvy, Power Platform savvy, List does integrate with the Power Platform, so you can actually go further if you want even more advanced configuration. You can always add on to it there. So creating a new list is very simple, and this is what the list homepage looks like. So if you just launch Microsoft Lists from the Microsoft 365 app launcher, you'll get to List Home right here. And if anyone was already familiar with using SharePoint lists in the past, everything is the same on the back end. So if you already had existing lists before and you launch Microsoft Lists from the app launcher, all your prior lists will actually already show up here. So everything is the same in the back end. There really isn't any difference. It's just different entry points of getting to the same lists.
We're not seeing anything at the moment.
All right. I don't think I heard anything, but
You're
feel
not
free to
seeing
come out.
you're not seeing anything on the screen at the moment? Is that correct?
Only the last slide.
Only the last slide hasn't moved forward yet? Okay, I'm seeing it on my PC here and online, but you're not seeing it?
It should have the title, create a new list and share it with colleagues. That's what I'm hopefully presenting.
That's what I'm seeing here as well. If anyone else is having any issues, do you, if you're having any problems with it moving forward, Simon, it might be just stuck for you. Okay. Righto, I'll let you keep going, Andrea. Just we'll keep an eye out on it. Simon, you can always message me.
Sounds good. Thanks. With starting a list, again, you can start from any app or start from any device. And you can also get started with the list in 3 ways. So actually, you don't have to recreate the wheel if you already have an existing list that's similar to the one you're trying to create, or if you already have an Excel spreadsheet that you're using to track certain information. You can actually create a list from a spreadsheet or create a list from an existing list. And that just imports all of the formatting and columns already directly into that new list, so you don't have to do anything over again. The other option for creating lists is creating lists from a pre-existing template, which I will go into in this next slide here. We have 8 templates available on the list homepage, and there's actually 3 additional templates available in lists and teams. So if you are using lists within teams, there are actually 11 total templates right now. And templates are a super easy way to quickly build your list, and they're designed off of very common scenarios that we've seen customers asking for using their list. And again, you can always use it as a starting point and then continue to customize and configure your list from there.
Andrea, can I just get you to stop presenting and just represent, because we've got a few people that have given the same message. So just maybe just in case. I know some of us are seeing, some aren't, but might be worth just giving it a go.
Try this again. How does that look?
Much better.
Okay, awesome. That is lovely. And I'll show a quick demo of everything in a little bit too. So if you don't see what's on the screen, hopefully you'll be able to see what it looks like from there. But again, we have some really awesome ready-made templates. Some of our common ones include the work progress tracker, which is really helpful for managing any sort of calendar projects. We also have asset manager for renting out equipment or keeping track of assets. The onboarding ones and recruitment templates are really great for anything administrative. So again, like, we're continuing to expand this list of templates. Actually, coming soon, we have organizational specific templates. So you will actually be able to customize a template for your organization and save it to your organization for other people to use as a template. So that is coming soon later in this year.
Andrea, on that one, where are they, when you talk about having the template and sharing it, where do they actually sit? Is it like you've got a standard like sort of SharePoint where it pushes it out, or, you know, I know that might be a question that might come up.
Yeah, so it's all run on SharePoint in the back end, and actually SharePoint lists traditionally had a ton of different templates available. These are kind of the ones that we consolidated for the newer Microsoft List interface. But yeah, you start it with a template and it's created as a list just like normal. So the list itself sits in your SharePoint site or your Teams group, depending on where you're starting your list from.
Okay.
Awesome. And I also wanted to give a shout out to the List mobile app. I think this is awesome. The full power of Microsoft List sits mobilely in your pocket. So if you have a list already and you want to update it really quickly on the go, you can just pull out your phone and make that quick update. Especially, I'm seeing this a lot in frontline scenarios with anyone using a list to track inventory or to track different closing procedures and things like that. Everyone's able to use it when they're on the floor, really, off of their devices. It's also available for iPad. So right now it's just iOS. So if you have Apple, you'll be able to find it there. We are also coming out with an Android version of the app later this year too. So our team is definitely working on that. And now let's dive a little bit more into what customizing your list is like. There are so many different options for how you view and filter your information on lists. It makes it really easy to do anything. So the first thing that I can kind of touch on are the different views that are available. So right now we have 3 default views for your list that you can toggle in between. We actually have a calendar view, as you can see on the left side there, and that's really helpful for any event or timing-based information list. So you can get a quick snapshot of your calendar and see where everything lines up there. In the middle view, you can see the grid view. So this looks pretty standard rows and columns, but grid view also lets you edit things really, really quickly, and you can actually bulk edit certain items in your list too. So it acts a little bit like a spreadsheet would in that sense, but it's still in the nice interface of the list itself. And then finally, the view on the right is the gallery view. And this is especially helpful for any more visual information that you're tracking. So if there are pictures or images attached to each of the list items, it all kind of comes up as cards there, and you can always customize what shows up in the card and so on. And then the other way to customize your view in your list is by configuring the different formatting and forms. So we use forms to describe what actually shows up on one of the list items, and everything is customizable there. So you can actually configure what the form looks like and elect to show or hide different fields. So let's say you have a date that's really important for a list item. You can show the date column, and you may want to hide the notes column because maybe you don't really want people to add notes to the list item, and so on. You can also aesthetically customize how your list form shows up by adding a custom header or a footer to each of the cards. Um, of course, if you have a very specific and complex requirements that you want to build into your form, you can use the Power App integration to further customize the form of your list. And once again, I think I went over most of this already, but the other really nice thing that I actually use a lot are the conditional formatting features. So you can actually create rules, and they're just sentence-based rule structures to create a sort of flow or a trigger in your list. For example, I do this all the time, but if I have a list for keeping track of a project that I'm working on or a social media schedule that I'm doing, I will actually set up a rule in the list so that if one of the deadlines is today or if it's overdue, then it'll highlight that whole row as red. And again, that just really focuses everyone's attention to certain items. You can also add assignees to each of the items too, so certain people can get notified if some condition is met. You can create a rule to notify people if something is added to the list or something is updated. So again, everything is highly customizable, and this all can be done without really getting into any code. Or getting into anything on the Power Platform. Like, these are all native features in the list interface itself. So personally, I'm not a coder, and I'm able to get all this done just with click rules. And then the other great thing with lists and making it flexible is that you can use lists in Microsoft Teams. I know we are a Teams fan, and if you're anything like me, I think I run most of my operations for my team within our Teams channel. So you can actually add a list tab to a Teams channel natively just by clicking that plus button and adding lists right there. And you can create a new list right in Teams, or you can actually add one of your existing lists to your Teams channel. And again, one of the most important value props of Microsoft Teams and your content is by having that side-by-side view of the content along with your conversation. So that means you can open a list, work on it, and actually pop open a chat window that's attached to that list right alongside it. So you can make sure everything relevant is right there and all the information is included. Again, that just saves time and makes sure that no context is lost by switching between different app windows or opening a separate Teams chat or another Outlook window. Everything is in one place, which makes it super easy. So I have a quick demo that I can show right now, but before I go on,
we have a question. What was that?
Yeah, great. I was just going to ask.
Did I hear correctly that if you click on the name, it will pop out a chat in relation to that SharePoint, to that list in that previous screenshot that you had?
Yeah, so in Listen Teams, let's see. If you open one of the teams or one of the list items in the Teams window, the chat will pop up right there. I'll show that a little bit later too when I show the demo of Listen Teams.
Okay.
Excellent, thanks.
Nice, thank you.
Any other questions before I move on?
Not at this point, Andrea.
Okay, that sounds great. Can you all see the list tab that I have open on here?
Certainly can.
Okay, awesome. So this is what List Home looks like. And again, I got here by just launching Microsoft Lists from the Microsoft 365 app launcher. And again, everything, all of the lists that I've created and also all of the lists that were created in groups and teams that I've been a part of all show up here. I have a ton because I keep making example lists for fictional scenarios for different events and presentations that I run. But I wanted to show the process of creating a new list. So all you have to do is click the new list button there. And again, here we have all of our templates available. So each of these templates you can open up. This kind of just gives you a sample of what your list could look like, but at the end of the day, the columns are all there already, and then the formatting for each of the columns are also there. So once you start adding information, the color coding will already be there, and so on. So I'll just show what that looks like. So this is what it looks like to start a list from a template. Again, all of these columns are pre-populated, but you can always go in and edit any of it. So I can go ahead and click edit, delete, hide, show certain columns. And let's see, I wanted to show what an actually completed list looks like. So this is another fictional example of a list that I created. I don't actually have a cookie baking company, but this list is pretty robust in all the features that I've included. So again, we can see I actually set up conditional formatting already. So anything that was past due or due today is actually going to be highlighted red. So I didn't have to do anything here other than set that rule up. Afterwards, it just automatically went and highlighted all of that. I love the choice pill columns here, so everything's kind of very easy to follow visually. I know we see a lot of scenarios where customers are using an Excel spreadsheet prior to track information like this, and it's certainly doable if you want to use a spreadsheet, but you're not going to get the customization that you get here. It's also inherently more collaborative to use lists over maybe a spreadsheet that could be sitting on someone's local file. Again, I don't have this example here, but I love being able to add owners to each item. So if I actually wanted to go in and add someone to one of the items to assign them responsibility, I could just go in and add the name of someone here. So there's my coworker.
The questions come up, would you use this rather than planner? So I think there's still just a little bit of confusion over, the difference between the two and when you would use this over planner.
Yeah, that's a great question. We get it all the time. Personally, I think if you're just trying to keep track of tasks and you're really just, looking at a checkbox, is it done or is it not? I think Planner is great for that. There's a lot more information here than what I would be able to get through just through tasks. Again, instead of just is it complete or not, you can have status column that shows exactly what step of the way you are. And you can go ahead and customize the options that are available for this. So you can really keep track of a lot more, in my opinion, here. Again, the customization with the choice pills and the colors, I think adds a little bit more aesthetically to your list. So if you're presenting this list or giving it to someone else, I think it's easier to follow a lot of things.
I've been trained a little bit more. It's more like data lists rather than task listing. And if you think of it that way, it might actually help you a little bit more, because when we're talking tasks, that's quite different to talking data lists.
I think the template is good too, because we use, we tried the template for the issue tracker.
Yeah.
So an obvious title, it has an obvious reason for it. It's issues you're tracking, it's not tasks that you're assigned to a person.
Yes.
You use it on top of.
Yeah.
But it's here, incident, problem, steps, troubleshooting, resolution. Where it's not a, can you go and have a look at it, which would be planner or the task or to do this. Yeah, we tried it once. Jay's got one, he just got one there. I was doing it on my phone, just simple.
Could you hear that, Andrea?
Yeah, more or less. I think I missed a bit of the end, but a little bit more than task tracking. And I think also from an administrative perspective, if you are owning this list and kind of overseeing it for your team, again, I think the rules that you can add to it are a little bit more robust than in tasks or to do. So I can actually step into what creating a rule looks like. Again, let's say I'm kind of owning this project, and so I want to know exactly what's going on to the list, whether anything's updated or not, or maybe even if it's changed to a specific thing, I want to get notified. So again, you can always go in and edit this sentence structure so that you get notified actually when something happens. So this is just an example for when a new item is created. But again, if I just want to know if something is failing, let's say, then I can set up the notification so that it emails me when the status hits fail or blocked or something like that. So highly customizable. again, it integrates with the Power Platform. So if you actually want to go into Power Automate and do something else even more advanced, you can do that as well. So that is my example list. And then the other, any other questions first before I'm going to jump into teams and actually show adding the list to teams?
No, that's all. I'm conscious of time and making sure that we get a chance to talk about the adoption and the site and the things that are going to, I think, resonate for an audience here that might want to try and use it or push it out.
Yeah, that's great. Let's actually hop over to some of the adoption scenarios. Then I think that might be
I think that's a good idea. Great, thank you.
Perfect. So yeah, let's talk about list scenarios. I just have a couple of slides kind of breaking out common scenarios that we see are really helpful for customers. And I broke them into 3 categories, but again, you can always, I've seen people use lists for several of these categories combined. So you can make a giant list for anything. For one, information tracking is probably the most common. So this is tracking things like employee onboarding, tracking a process like recruiting, or even tracking, not necessarily a process, but keeping track of assets and inventory and things like that. And we had that specific template for it. Again, with the progress columns, using those choice pills, it's a really visual way to keep track of where everything is along a process. The other very common use case that we see is using lists to manage different work streams. So this is similar to the example list that I just shown that's kind of following a launch or a project. We've seen a lot of engineers use it to manage a product roadmap. And again, this is really helpful for anything that involves a deadline or dates because you can add that deadline column and actually create those rules to notify certain people. Again, you can add owners to certain items. So in a large team effort where different responsibilities are being signed out to different people, that keeps everyone on the same page. And then lastly, lists for organizing information is really helpful. I used to do this all the time. I used to use Excel spreadsheets to just keep an ongoing list of notes and details and things like that. And I find it a lot more easy to do that with lists itself. For example, you can store contact details for customers or partners. The sort and filtering functions are really great in lists. You can actually group by certain categories and group by certain choices that you've added in each of the columns. In education, you can actually create a list for your class and share class resources and assignments. And you can also hook up your list to Microsoft Forms. So we've also seen customers automatically set it up so survey results from a Microsoft form sends directly into a list. So you can do your consolidating and analyzing of that data in the list itself. So let's walk through the list adoption page right now, which I have conveniently open. I think actually one of my favorite parts of the site and the resources there are the day in the life guides. And so I just gone over a couple of scenarios already, but you can see there are different guides for each of these roles here, and they can really be super diverse. So
are these still all PDFs, so you can't actually change it or put the client logo or anything like that on it, Andrea?
yeah, they are PDFs, but I mean, if you can download them and do what you want with them afterwards as well. Oh, and also note that we have a couple more coming for frontline related scenarios. So that's kind of the next big bump that we're doing in terms of expanding our use cases and resources.
Right. Yeah, that's always been a bit of a miss, and I have spoken with Caruana. We used to always be able to, at least put the colours or the logos of the business to top and tail it if we needed to, and have it in a Word document. But that's one of the downsides of having it as a PDF. It's been difficult for clients out there to actually use this. Often we're not using them just purely because of that reason.
That's good to note. I didn't think about using it for that use case, so that's good for myself to know. We also have a couple other things here. I mean, we have a quick start guide for just getting familiar with the list homepage and the interface. The playbook actually goes, it's a slide deck, but it actually goes through a couple of different recommendations for how to spread the word about lists. different steps you can take in order to make that transition easier. I know List is not a large product rollout, maybe like Teams would have been, because I don't think it's a necessity that everyone uses List, but it still takes a little bit for people to get familiar. So I think it's still really helpful in that sense. And then I also wanted to point out that we have an updated training site and resource for Microsoft List. So this is actually a new training course. It's getting started with Microsoft List, and it comes with, it's all split out by chapter and topics, and there are video demos for each of these. And we're adding more to this documentation every day. And so right now it's mostly just getting started and simple customization, and we're also planning on adding more robust customization, possible inclusion of the Power Platform integrations and things like that. So if you haven't checked out the new training page, then I definitely recommend doing that. We have some more videos, and then touching on the collaborative work management story again, we just put these out actually, but we have a couple of assets for collaborative work management as a whole. So this is the new pamphlet that talks about how you can use all these apps together. And then we have these when to use guides, which I think will be really helpful. Again, we know we get a ton of questions about what's the difference. And so these just make it really easy to split out when do I use what are the differentiators, and so on. There are 3 of them on here. This one's for planner, list, and project. There's to-do, planner, list, basically any combination of the work management apps you'll find on there. That's mostly it for the adoption site though. Any other questions about the resources available and what's coming? I have a quick roadmap slide too, and I can let us sit on that as well.
I haven't got any questions at this point, but having a look at the roadmap will be great. The adoption site's great. You know, it's a great way, I think, you know, when I speak with my with clients and with my audience, when you're trying to reinvigorate teams or usage or things like that, bring in a new product, do the whole launch a product like lists or something to be able to give you an opportunity to reinvigorate other things in Teams and do sessions. So that's the sort of thing that we see if you want to try and lift usage of Teams because it's not great, rather than go, I'm just going to do Teams training. Launch one of the products and then put Teams training again around it, and then you might find that people will come back through and start to lift, because you always get new starters and things like that. It's just a perfect opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I echo that, because I think a lot of people actually don't even realize that List is available already in their subscription, or that List is available in Teams. And no, it may not be a necessity for work, but it's definitely a nice to have, and it makes organization a lot easier. So it could be just like a really flashy feature that gets people kind of thinking, and I think it could actually change up how some people run work at their teams.
Yeah. I have a question, Andrea, that's come through from Darren. Thanks, Darren.
Great.
I like to connect each item in a list to a document in the Teams tab file. I usually use the URL type field in the list. However, I can only link one file at a time. What are your thoughts to linking files to a list?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually haven't really had a workaround to that. I think if you want to actually do a multi-line text column in one of your list items and just add URLs to that, you could do that, but it's not gonna like automatically link and launch to that file. So yeah, feedback noted. I think that could be really great.
Okay, thanks.
Quick look at the roadmap too. Right now we have the List app that's available. We've just added undo and redo functions. So if you make a mistake, you can actually just undo it. You saw the rules already. The calendar view just was rolled out to the general public. So calendar view is also now available to everyone. Coming up soon, again, we'll have, Project Nucleus is coming up. So you'll actually be able to edit and access your list when you're offline. Basically just saves everything that you've been doing offline, and then as soon as you're back online, it'll sync everything up. And later on this year, we'll see lists for Android, as I mentioned before. those custom list templates. So that's what I was mentioning earlier about the organizational templates that you can actually customize and set for your organization. You'll be able to launch Power BI visualizations of your lists. So again, if you actually do want to get a little bit more analytical with the information that you're tracking, and I know this is going to be a little bit similar to Excel, but again, it just gives you that flexibility. You can actually spin up a Power BI dashboard automatically from that list from right inside List Home, and that'll just give you instant insights into that data. Any other questions? You can read more about announcements and stuff if you're following the Microsoft 365 Tech Community blog. That's usually where we put out all of our product announcements and Ignite sessions or event recordings and so on. And that's where most of it's going to come out.
We've got one question come through from Joe. For task tracking management, I like using lists as I can add custom columns, etc. But I like the sub-task features of Planner. Do you have any suggestions on how I can create a sub-task type behavior using lists?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. I think, again, that's why it's not necessarily just a task app. I've added some more things into like a notes column to add to it a list item itself. You can actually also add a list to a plan or vice versa. You can link a task into a list item. So if you do want to use both, you can do that as well.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, I see a hand up, I think from Peter.
Feel free to unmute, Peter. Happy for you to ask a question. No, it's okay.
Sorry, no, I just made a mistake.
It's all good.
False alarm. Do it all the time. Let's go on. Again, these are just more resources that we have available. We've got some updated demos. If you are interested in configuring at a higher level with the Power App integrations and Power Automate, I highly recommend that second to last link out there. That's just a video going really in depth into advanced configuration of your lists. And I know that stuff gets pretty technical, so that was actually helpful for me to understand how to do it. Yep.
Andrea, just a question at the moment. You can sync messages from Message Hub to Planner. I think lists would be far more useful to track actually what's happening with some of these new features. Any chance of having this sync to a list instead of Planner, or create a list from a plan?
Not right now. The integration isn't there at the moment. I think the team is working on building more connectors between List and Planner. So we're hoping to kind of sync your tasks from one to the other. But in terms of the Message Hub, I don't think there actually is.
Okay.
That's actually all I had today. I have more resources linked on here. I also did want to make a shout out about the podcast that my coworker Mark Cashman runs. If you prefer to get your news and information through podcasts, he has one called The Intrazone that goes into all things OneDrive, SharePoint. He talks about lists quite frequently, and he'll actually interview different industry experts to talk about each. So that's also a really great resource.
All right. Thanks, Andrea. Really appreciate it. I know that it's been a topic of conversation that's actually come up an awful lot with clients as to what are they, what should you use, when should you use it. Yeah, there's been a bit of confusion around it, and they don't realise that this has actually been around for a really long time as well. That it's been sitting there in SharePoint. It's just kind of got a fancier front end for Teams now, and the way that it works. No, thank you for that. I am going to just swap over now, so I'll steal your presentation. This is all available. You should have it online, everyone. Okay, let me go back to presenting for you. Just double check you've got the right screens up everywhere. Looks like it. Excellent. Okay. So just finalising that, some of the resources are already provided in her presentation. I've dropped them in here if you, just in case you don't go through the link, so I've put them here as well for you. All the standard stuff towards the end of the meeting, I have put in all the adoption resources and content that you're fairly used to me showing up at the end. So for anyone that's new, if you're not sure where to find adoption resources, this is where you can go, where I often go to get my latest news. I spend a lot of time in the tech community. So in each one of the products, like Teams, for example, it'll go what's new. So, and you can always even type in just on a browser what's new in Microsoft Teams, and it will actually take you to the tech community blog site. So you'll find a lot of it in there. And have a look at the roundup. There are lots of really awesome user groups. So if you're more in the technical space rather than we're in kind of the business side of things rather than the technical side of things, you can go actually onto GitHub, and it's all the Australia and New Zealand user groups that are run across the Microsoft space. Where you're going to find us online. What's next? Our next session is on the 6th of July. Looking at a speaker for you. I haven't got one like I did last month, but we'll work something out. It's been a bit more, do I have someone in person or online, because now we're starting to potentially swap over to the in-person again. But feel free to come along if you are in Sydney. Anyone online, feel free to join us. I know it's easier now. A lot of people aren't coming into the city so much anymore and working from home, so we're going to be a bit hybrid. Hopefully this has all worked for you today, both in person and online. Never easy in terms of cross different audiences. Do you have any thoughts, comments, questions, or anything that you want to ask from myself or Andrea? Please feel free to flick them through. I'll have a look. I'm conscious of time. Looks like we are going to finish literally on the dot. So we did fairly clearly. I talked way too fast going through the new features, and there was so much more than that, by the way. When you go into the message center and you have a look, and even in the message center, it doesn't have stuff that you'll find online in terms of some of the news and vice versa. So, but please keep an eye out on some of that. That will really help you. And as I said, you can get your message center forwarding through to planner if there's things that you need to do or advise, and have a look also at the people within your business that need to know what's going on. You know, the comms team or the change managers, or set them up with admin reporting privileges to be able to see this sort of stuff. Will really help them. Thanks everyone. Until next month. Hopefully you've enjoyed the session, and I look forward to seeing everyone again. I will stop the recording, so if you do have a question that you would like to ask and it's not on the recording, I will do that now. But otherwise, I'll let you get on with your day. Righto, bye all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Really appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, pleasure.
Oh, that's wonderful. Great to connect again.
Sorry, this is the first time I've ever been. Where could I find all that information? So
Okay, so I have put a link into the chat, so everyone should also, if you're still online, it is in the chat. I will also provide it through my Twitter, I'll provide it through LinkedIn, and I'll also put it in Meetup. I usually put it across all the platforms. And what I've also done is I've created a YouTube channel, and I did load the recording up to a YouTube channel just recently. I haven't promoted that yet. I was going to just see how it went, start loading the videos there, and pulling them up on YouTube. So. Yeah, but it is in the meeting. I've actually already put the link. I put the link to the presentation. I always put the link to the recording in the presentation as well, so it's not completely separate. It's actually included in the presentation, and it all just links to my external SharePoint site for the user group. So you should be able to see it all online and pull down anything that you need.
okay, so it's in the Meetup.
Yeah.
It's in Meetup.
Yeah, I'll also put it in Meetup as well. So it'll be in the comments. So I'll load that once it's downloaded and I finish the presentation. So I shall do that right now.